Greetings, students. I'm your instructor for this course, CPO 3403, Politics of the Middle East. And today we are going to continue with Module 11, but this time we focus on Part 2. And if you recall, Part 2 focuses on the smaller countries in the Persian Gulf. All right. If you remember, in Part 1, what we did was we focused on the big regional powers. And the big regional powers, as you know, are Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. Okay? Look at the size of these countries, and actually this map even doesn't show all of it because the rest is the other side. These are very, very, very large countries, is that right, with a lot more population. Now, today what we'll do is, I thought, the best thing would be to show you, first of all, the political map, because political map just shows the border, shows where the major cities are, shows the capital city and everything, and then that way you have a nice big picture of the area before we get into talking about the little places, okay? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to enlarge the map so you can see it better. All right, so having said that one, now look at this, okay? So, one of these countries is Kuwait. As you can see, it's bordering Iraq and Saudi Arabia. And in 1990, it was, Iraq under Saddam Hussein that invaded Kuwait. Then we basically gathered our forces by 1991 around Saudi Arabia, and then we went, with the international coalition that President Bush Sr. created, we went to liberate Kuwait from Iraqis. One of these countries is Bahrain. As you can see, Bahrain is actually, let me see if I can make it any larger. Yes, I can. Here we go. That's good. Okay. So this is Bahrain, and the capital of it is Manama, and it's actually an island. As you can see, this island is pretty much in the Persian Gulf. One side of it is coming to the shores of Qatar, and the other side of it goes to the shores of what? Saudi Arabia. And what connects Bahrain to, to the land is that causeway that the Saudis and Bahrainis, they built, I've been actually on that highway. And it can be a very dangerous one, okay? Then the next country around there is Qatar. Qatar is one of those very interesting countries that is a small country, but has a big country foreign policy. As you can see in the, negotiations between Hamas and Israel, Qatar has been very, very active. And then some of the political officers of Hamas, they used to reside in Qatar. Another one that I'd like to share with you, see, if I can get it smaller, not this, not that, here we go, it's just going on, here we go. Another one that I would like to share with you is UAE. If I can get it to go up, that would be nice. Okay, and this is UAE, and as you can see, UAE it's basically a confederation. It's one of the few confederations that is left in the world. Consists of like about 6-7 different sheikdoms right there, all the way from the pretty much like a tip of the peninsula, going all the way down to what? Abu Dhabi. Okay. By the way, a lot of you have heard about the name Dubai. This is Dubai, next to Sharjah, so Dubai is between Sharjah, which is one of the other sheikdoms, and what? Abu Dhabi. Dubai is very well known. A lot of people, they know about Dubai is becoming like, how should I put it? Like nowadays Paris of the Middle East. They used to call Beirut the Paris of the Middle East before the Beirut's, civil war, and between the 1982 Israeli invasion and now the most recent one. But Dubai is very peaceful, and very business-oriented. And the other side of it, as you can see, are the other sheikdoms. So Abu Dhabi is one, which is very famous for what? Oil. Dubai actually has oil, but it's very, very business-oriented, so it gets money from those in addition to oil. And then there is Sharjah, and there is Qusum, and then Fujairah right in the back. So, that basically consists of what? Consists of the sheikdoms that, you can see in this country. And then the last, but certainly not least, country that here we should really focus on in terms of the smaller countries, okay, is Oman, right there. You can see that one. All right. Now that I've shown you this one, I wanted to remind you about that very nice outline that we had. And that outline, if you remember, was doing what? was basically organizing what we need to know about what our country studies. Because remember, this is the last part of the course. In module 11, we are bringing country studies to our what, under, our attention. And with the country studies, we focused, if you remember, on just Persian Gulf, because there are 3 different sub-regions of the Middle East, if you remember, focusing on North Africa, then the, Eastern Mediterranean, which is also known as, Israel and its neighbors. And last but certainly not least, Persian Gulf. And because in Persian Gulf, we Americans have a lot of bases, we have a very significant interest in terms of oil, even though we do not really use that much oil from outside. Yes, we do import very little, but we have actually become a major oil exporter ourselves, because oil and natural gas are very, very important strategic commodities, and the whole world has an addiction to oil and gas. Is that right? It's like, basically 21st century would not happen without oil and gas. And people usually think only about transportation, but remember, food production. How do we produce food? We produce food, first of all, by, chemical fertilizers. Where chemical fertilizers coming from? Oil and gas. Then we try to protect our harvest against the insect. Where do the pesticides come from? Oil and gas. So you need to really consider that oil and gas are not just for transportation, it's for production of food. Beyond that one, they're also very, very important in production of clothing. Almost every kind of clothes nowadays, they have some kind of nylon in it. Is that right? Nylon, polyester. Where do you think they get the nylon and polyester? Again, from oil. So oil is extremely significant in our century. And that's why US, even if it doesn't receive significant amount of oil from this part of the world, it needs, like a Roman Empire, is that right? It doesn't need it, but it wants to control the what? Commodity, because it's a very precious what? Precious commodity. Okay. Now, having said that one, again, I would like to remind you of the outline we had, and we use, if you remember that outline for the big countries. That outline consists of the geography, history, socio-cultural setting, economic condition, quality of life, political development, security and military condition, foreign policy, and the prospects for future. Is that right? So, let's start, for example, with the most basic one on the very, very first country right there, Kuwait. Is that right? Now, remember that we went on a war with, Saddam Hussein over Kuwait. Why? Because, as you can see, this huge country called Iraq, all right? Now, you don't see the rest of it because the map doesn't show the rest of it, okay? But this huge country we call Iraq, let me see if I can make this one smaller. No, it doesn't want to do anything. Here we go. Here you can see it in what? Topographical map, all right? In topographical map, you see how big Iraq is as opposed to what? Little Kuwait, you see? So this is very, very important. Now, in this regard, when we enlarge it like this, you can see that Iraq, that big country, has a very small shoreline in Persian Gulf, only 12 miles. While Kuwait, which is much smaller because it has all those curves and this and that, it has what? About 120 miles, okay? So one of the reasons, see, the geography can be a very important factor. So here, Iraq could never be a major naval force. Why? Because, if you get into a conflict with somebody, very quickly they can what? They can capture that section or control it or destroy whatever you have over there, and here goes your navy. Is that right? But Kuwait technically could, and Kuwait technically and historically has had a fleet, but has always been a merchant fleet, like fishermen or people who were picking, Persian Gulf, pearl. As I mentioned, that was one of the major industries in this area. During 2002 to 2003, I was actually there. I got a sabbatical from UCF, and I was actually stationed there with the help of the, with our help of our embassy, American embassy over there. And one of my job was to go to different places and try to figure out, for example, what's the strategic, dimension of that. Meet a lot of people, see what would happen if there is a war and everything else right there. Who's going to be on our side, American side, and what would the Arab street say, as they say? What they mean by Arab street is what's the public opinion. That's what they meant. All right. So as you can see, it's right there. So I have actually traveled all over these areas, and I have some pictures that in future I can actually show you. Traveled all over there, you know. So Ahmadiyya is the area where they have a biggest refinery. Kuwait City is the capital of the country, and of course that's Kuwait. All right. So you can see how geography can make this country vulnerable to what? To Iraq, which what? It was declaring that historically Kuwait has been a part of Iraq historically. That's what we're arguing. Is that right? Now, socioculturally speaking, we can say in Kuwait, population is almost divided. One third of them are Persian or Iranian origin. One third of them are almost Iraqi origin, and about one third of them they have connection to the tribes in what we call Saudi Arabia. They're not Saudis, but they're Arabian. Okay. So that's as Kuwait is concerned. In terms of the economic, as I mentioned, socio-cultural one we already mentioned. In terms of the economic part of it, it's a very rich country. Extremely small population, as the reading suggested, but very, very rich. Per capita is very rich. Quality of life is wonderful because a lot of things in Kuwait is subsidized, okay? And then, of course, the political development, as opposed to the other countries, traditionally, Kuwait actually has been a little bit more free. The emirs of Kuwait have always been a little bit more open-minded. The media is a little bit more. Now, it doesn't mean that you can insult, insult the emir or the king, okay? But politically, media of Kuwait has been a little bit more wide, has had a little bit more flexibility in terms of criticizing. But usually, they don't criticize the emir. If they criticize the ministers, okay? What here we call, for example, Secretary of State. Over there, they call Minister of Foreign Affairs. So they would criticize those guys. Then, of course, the military and what security, they have a lot of agreement with us as Americans. They do the best they can, and then in terms of foreign policy, they've always tried to play a balancing role, even during the time that Iranian government was not very nice, with the countries here. Kuwait always had a relationship with Iran, very close one. I tried to bring things together. Okay, enough about Kuwait. Now, let's look at what? Bahrain. Oh, by the way, Kuwait is majority what? Sunni, but there is about a third of the population that are about Shia. Okay, then we have Bahrain, as you can see right there. Okay, an island one connected to Saudi Arabia. In Bahrain, the regime, the leadership is Sunni, but majority of the population are what? Shiite. So Iran has had a lot of influence, and sometimes they have a problem with Tehran because if the Shiite population kind of rebels against the regime, they always blame it on Iran. But many times Iran has had nothing to do with it. The reason the Shiites over there, they have a tendency to rebel or protest is because they feel like in their own country they're second-class citizens, even though they're the majority. Okay? So that's one of the things. And then the Saudis, they connected it with this, bridge to, Bahrain. So you can see the bridge over there. As I mentioned, I've been over that bridge. It can be very dangerous because, Bahrain is one of the two countries that you can actually have alcohol in international hotels or whatever. And then I have seen over there sometimes people from Saudi Arabia come over there on the weekends or something, and then driving back to Saudi Arabia just before they get to the border of Saudi Arabia. If you look at the Persian Gulf, you see that a lot of people, they have thrown the bottles of whatever down into the water. And then if they are not really 100% sober, of course, they might be, going right and left and make the, kind of create a dangerous, driving condition or something. So that's what I was saying about Bahrain. Bahrain is one of those countries that actually is going to lose all of its oil before anywhere else. So Bahrainis have been kind of smart in terms of thinking about other industries, as some of the readings suggest. Bahrain has, here we go, I can show right there. Oh, here we go. No. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Bahrain has a very, active, banking, sector right there, offshore banking. As you know, offshore banking is very, very important. And also, in addition to that one, Bahrain has had aluminum industry. And then Bahrain has an island right there that, has lended basically to the U.S. Navy. And then U.S. uses it as a what? As a base. And they have done also tremendous amount of what? Ship repair. Their ship repair, history goes back to the time of Iran-Iraq war from 1980 to 1988. Well, Iraqis and Iranian, military, they were attacking each other's ships or tankers or something. So many of these tankers, they would end up in Bahrain. They were doing a repair. So Bahrain, in that regard, has tried to go beyond dependency on what, just oil and gas. All right, next. Next one is, as you can see, Qatar. Qatar, if you look very carefully at it, you see it's basically a peninsula, is that right? Which is coming out of Arabia, is that right? This is Arabia, am I right? Or what we call Saudi Arabia. Okay. Qatar is very rich in natural gas, all right? Qatar right there is sharing its natural gas with what? Right here, there is a very large, deposit of natural gas that is shared between Iran and what? Qatar. Iranians, they cannot use it as much because when it gets to the deeper part of the Persian Gulf, they do not have the technology. But Qataris, because they have a very good relationship with the West, they were able to use their, Western, partners with their technology. They're what? They're using their, they're getting their natural gas and they're selling it, okay? And that's the major source of income. A couple of other things that Qatar does, in addition to that one, okay? If this is trying to be, here we go. As you know, I'm sure some of you have heard about Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is also headquartered in Qatar, okay? Qatar also has a number of foundations, very, very important. So Qatar is diplomatically active. It has a what? Oil and gas. It brings a lot of international, conferences and meetings here and there. And tries to act like a neutral party, tries to have a relationship with everybody. Qatar and also Iran have a pretty good relationship as well. Okay, so what else? Then the next one I want to introduce to you is what? UAE, okay? And I mentioned about UAE a little bit before. Okay, here we go. As I mentioned, UAE is what? UAE, again, these are all very small countries, relatively speaking, in terms of population and in terms of the territory. UAE consists of these, basically, little sheikdoms. They are extremely rich because all of them, they rely on oil and gas revenue. Of course, some of them, like Dubai, have had so much wisdom to what? Be pro-business and, try to promote themselves. Like Dubai, when, a lot of people, they weren't focusing even on internet, it was very much, forward looking by having internet centers and this and that, everything over there. And they attracted a lot of businesses from Europe and North America coming over there, opening. If they want to open a headquarter in the Middle East, guess where most of the time they do that? They do it in Dubai. All right. Now, UAE in general is a very interesting country because it's not easy to become a citizen of UAE, all right? It would take years, and you have to be really married to somebody and waited for some long time and everything, because UAE, citizens, they receive a lot of benefits, okay? But because it's not easy to be a member of it, the individuals who are, citizen of the country, they have what? They have benefits that is unheard of in some places. However, there are a lot of Europeans, Americans, Asians, and Africans working in UAE. Believe it or not, out of the 100% population that lives in UAE, only 15% are what? UAE citizen. That means technically in their own country, UAE people are a minority, okay? In terms of numbers, not in terms of what? Power. So another very interesting thing about UAE is, traditionally they've had relationship with Iran and other countries or something. So that remains to, to be an important factor. Last but not least country, if I can get back to this one and make it larger for you, is what? Here we make it big so you can see it better. Is Oman. Look at Oman, which is so interesting. Is that right? Oman goes all the way, as you can see with this map, Oman goes all the way to what? It starts from one side of the Persian Gulf and it goes to what? Sea of Oman. Okay, so or Gulf of Oman, better to say, Persian Gulf, then Gulf of Oman, and this one pours into the what? Arabian Sea. As you can see, is a pretty large what? Territory. And what other interesting thing about Oman is you see that little section right on the top of the peninsula of UAE. That actually doesn't belong to UAE. That actually belongs to what? Oman. Okay. So Oman historically has been the land of people who love to, explore places by their ships. There are some stories about Sandbad, who was a very famous, local, what do you call it? Captain, sea captain was actually originally from Oman. Some people say he was originally from Oman. Some people, they say with that name Sandbad, which is a Persian name, most likely he was Persian. So there are debates about those things. What is Oman famous for? Oman also has oil and gas, but Oman traditionally, because when you look at, here we go, let me show you this one right there. Look. This is Oman, is that right? See, when you look at, stop, please stop. Okay, here we go. So when you look at UAE, you see a lot of what? Flat land, very little green. Look at Oman. Oman has a what? Huge piece of mountains right there. Is that right? Mountain range. And because of that, it catches a lot of water. Because it catches water, you can see right there is green. Why? What do they have? They have a lot of farms. They can produce actually a lot of their own food. Okay, so that's an amazing place in that regard. I have been. It's a beautiful country, very, very pretty country. And then Oman is one of those countries that went to a major change. If you remember a long time ago, when we were talking in the earlier modules, when we were talking about Oman, we talked about Sultan Qaboos, is that right? The son of Sultan Said. Sultan Said, if you remember, was the the leader of Oman, that his parents, they sent him to British India. He got educated and everything, but he was not interested in educating his people. He was not interested in bringing his country to the 20th century, because that was his century, okay? So, but he sent his son, Sultan Qaboos, to what? To UK for study. So, yes, his son also got British education, but not British education in India. British education actually from the British. When he came back by 1971, he noticed that his father doesn't want to do anything. He's still trying to keep the country like before. There were not really very many, schools, hospitals, not very many cars even in the country, okay? So, if you wanted to, for example, have a permit for your, for your car that you imported, let's say you're super duper rich. Not everybody, first of all, had a car, okay? You have to actually write to the court of, Sultan Said and get a permission actually from the from the king himself. So that was not an easy thing. So then the members of the court, they invited, the royal court, I meant, they asked basically to encourage Sultan Qaboos to do a, very, very peaceful, we call it the court coup, is that right? Royal coup, and then basically asked the dad, because his dad has put him in a house arrest, okay? And they made a coalition with the young king, and then they put the father into house arrest, and then Qaboos basically started running the show and started really opening up. So he made a lot of very significant changes in Oman in a relatively short period of time. So back to this area, what I wanted to show you, let me see if I can make it a little bit larger, because I want you to see the topographical part of it. Here we go. I guess this one doesn't want to topographically show it, that area that you see Oman. So Strait of Hormuz is basically divided between in terms of the law enforcement, between what? Oman, which has that little section which is separated from the rest of the country, and what? And Iran, which is on the north. So what I wanted you to know about this area is these countries right there, even though they are small, do not underestimate them, because first of all, they're very rich. When what do you call it? The Arab Spring started in 2011. While Arab Spring took over North Africa, Eastern Mediterranean, etc., etc., in some cases changed the regime. In some cases brought a civil war. Like Libya and Syria brought civil war. So try to bring basically political change there. In this part of the Middle East, the kings, they basically started providing a lot more benefits to their citizens, and somehow that type of demand for more and more political participation kind of fizzed away. So very, very interesting. area in terms of thinking about political development versus economic development, the whole notion of citizenship against being a subject, the whole notion of what type of, citizenship is this, like, social social contract of Rousseau, or is that basically somebody's buying your your vote and support by providing you with a lot of free services. So very small areas, small population, tremendous amount of wealth, and we will see what happens in future, because as oil changes, those countries that they were smart enough to come and diversify their economy, they're not going to go to the shock, because guess what? All of these countries, even though their population is small, their population is increasing, and there's just so much job you can create for these people. Before people, they end up basically sitting at home or sitting in the coffee houses or Starbucks. There are so many Starbucks over there, unbelievable. Every time I go over there, some of my former students, they invite me, oh, Dr. Sadi, why don't we meet in such and such restaurant, or mall or something. And everywhere we go, they say, oh, probably you're missing Starbucks coffee. Let me take you over there, Look we have Starbucks. Look, we have this. Look, we have that. So, for example, a place like Dubai, when I'm over there, if I close my eyes and think about the, places that I have been, it just seems like representation of Europe and North America, with one big difference, that you see people, the citizen of, UAE obviously are not what? Blonde-headed, blue eyes. Is that right? And they are basically local, Arabs, who are enjoying very high quality life and everything, even though political development has not happened the way we expected it to be a democracy or something. In terms of security, all of them, they have very close relationship in one way or another with UK and US. And all of them, in a way, kind of concerned about radical ideas coming from Iran. Radical ideas can come from Iraq. You see what I mean? And don't underestimate radical ideas coming from Saudi Arabia, because in Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis, is that right? They have been trying to promote their, version of Islam, and they end up, trying to export it to Yemen. And as you know, Yemenis eventually responded, and it became a very big military conflict between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. All right. This is what I wanted you to know about the little countries. And then in terms of future prospect of it, it really depends on what activities which is going on over there, not just in terms of the economic development, but also population. Please focus on the population explosion, and then how these new, younger, educated population can be actually absorbed to play a productive role, as opposed to being dissatisfied with the regime and become a disloyal opposition. All right. So we learned a whole lot about these little countries. Of course, I didn't go to a lot of details. I just covered the major issues. So you can, when you're reading each one of those, like, fact section that I put for you, you would have a better idea. All right. And as usual, if you have a question, what do? You contact me. Thank you for your attention.